Hi, class. Welcome to the Friday, October 18th edition of Counseling 120. Today, what we will be covering is money, budgets, and planning. And then next week, we're going to get into financial aid. So we'll dig right into it. And we'll start with talking about personal finance. And really, the hope for you is to reach and maintain financial freedom. So, what does that entail? It starts with knowing and understanding how much money you have. Also, being able to track your spending and knowing how much you spend. The goal is obviously to spend less than you have and be committed to that. Also think about strategies where you can save more money and ways that you can potentially earn more money. So those are some keys to personal finance that we'll talk about. So we'll start with the strategies, right? So one of the keys to reaching that financial freedom is not overspending, right? So a good way to go about this is there are a lot of tools out there that you can utilize to maintain and track your spending. For example, mint.com is an example of something that you can use, but a lot of banks and credit cards also enable you to kind of take a look at where you're spending and what you're spending. You can also make Excel spreadsheets to help you with this as well. Another great strategy is to really monitor and track all of your expenses, whether they be big, small, or in between. So it's also good to keep track of those small things that you spend. If you do it quite a bit, could add up to quite a lot. So maybe you go to your favorite coffee shop and a cup of coffee is $5. Well, that $5 adding up over the month, if you're going 3, 4, or 5 times a week, can be quite a bit. It's also really important to take a look and be honest with looking at what you need versus what you want, right? Think about things that you may need now, or you may have a purchase that you'd like, but could that be something that you could postpone or wait on? And maybe the price will change. Maybe there will be other models that come out that will be less expensive that could be sufficient that you could use, right? So a real life example of that is right now the iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro are out, and that could cost anywhere between $1,000 to, let's say, $1,600, right? But you may be able to get another model of a smartphone for a lot less, or an older model of an iPhone for a lot less. Or if you need transportation, maybe you can get a certified pre-owned car instead of a brand new car and save a little bit of money. So those are all examples where you can kind of look at options and also wants versus need. Do you need that new phone? Do you need that new car? Another great strategy is eating out and dining out quite a bit. Can add up in terms of costing a lot of money. So if you can prepare your own meals and really be smart with grocery shopping and meal prep, that can help you spend a lot less too. Another thing that people don't often think about is quality items. So the cheap items, they're not always better. So sometimes you can get away and you only need cheap items. But if you're looking for something that you're going to keep and have for a long time, it is good to consider quality as well. So think about that when making purchases as well, because buying the quality might be more expensive up front, but in the long term could be less expensive than getting something that's cheaper, for example. Also want to shop around. And I think that students are really good and savvy about this, but finding the best price available for things. So really not just settling for something just because it's there or convenient, but looking for the best price, and also utilizing coupons or coupon codes if you're buying online, or discount codes that you can apply to save money. Another really good strategy that folks use, especially if they have trouble controlling their spending, instead of using your credit card or debit card, which might not feel as real, it might be good to bring a certain amount of cash with you, and also just limiting yourself to the cash that you have on hand. And that can kind of help you eliminate purchasing with impulse buys. A lot of people feel like with credit cards or debit cards, it doesn't feel as real, whereas with cash in hand, you have a limited amount. So think about that as an option. And of course, with your travel, whether you're doing a vacation or driving or public transit or rideshare like Lyft and Uber, think about ways that you can save. Maybe Muni passes, bus passes, and Samtrans passes that you have could save you money, or monthly passes. And also, lastly, another strategy is just because others are spending a lot doesn't mean you have to fall into that peer pressure. And that's something that I think a lot of people deal with, is kind of that social pressure to fit in, and also wanting to feel worth. But a lot of times with financial freedom, it's really about discipline and self-control. So again, don't succumb to that peer pressure. Just because someone is spending a lot on clothes or money or drinks and food, it doesn't mean that you have to. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about and transition to is making sure that you protect your personal information, and to protect you against identity theft and fraud, because this is something that could definitely be harmful to your credit, could cost you a lot of money. So be sure that you're protecting your social security number, your passport number, your credit card numbers, bank account numbers, your driver's license, your student ID information. Really do not share this information unless you are absolutely sure that those you're sharing it with are credible. So examples where you may have to share your social security number is with admission to a school, if you're applying for a home loan or an auto loan to run your credit report, they may require that. But again, you don't necessarily want to be sharing that information. So scholarships, they're not going to be asking you for all, like credit card information or social security information. And if they are, be cautious about that. Talk to folks in the financial aid office to double check to make sure that they are credible. Okay. Also, we have a lot of documents. So there's a lot of things that are digital, but if you do have documents and information, be sure that it's protected, that you black out any important information. And if you no longer need that, take advantage of shredding this information. A lot of times in communities, we have free community shredding events. A lot of times banks and credit unions will also offer free shredding events where confidential information can be securely shred. So just the lesson here is to be cautious with your personal information. Now we're going to transition into debt, right? So debt is essentially borrowing money that you don't have now to pay for something that you need right now. And there are examples of good debt and bad debt. So let's talk about good debt, right? Good debt is something that can be really helpful and improve your life long term. So for example, a good example of good debt is education, right? And I know that there is a lot of controversy with student loans and the cost of some educational institutions and systems. but all of you are in community college, so in the most affordable segment of higher education that is out there. And also, I think that what you'll learn in this class and overall is that your earning potential is much higher with the more education that you have, right? So for a lot of you in this class, you are in school really to make a better future for yourself personally and also financially as well. So education is something that not all people have the privilege or luxury to be able to pay for upfront. And of course, there is financial aid. There are scholarships that are available. And again, we'll learn about a lot more of that next week when we dive into financial aid and scholarships. But what about the stuff that is not covered by financial aid and scholarships? How do you bridge that gap? Well, sometimes it does require borrowing money and taking out student loans. And again, education could be a good example of good debt if it enables you to earn more money in your lifetime. So that's an example of good debt. An example of bad debt, right? Something that loses value over time, right? So what are examples of that? Well, think about things like cars, for example. A brand new car automatically loses a certain amount of value once you drive it off the lot. Of course, you can argue that a car could be an example of good debt if it helps you get to school, get to work, bring your family places, bring your kids to school, drive around older parents. Those are all really practical needs that we have in our everyday lives. But where things can get tricky is how much car do you need and what do you need? So an example is if you can get along fine in, let's say, a Honda Civic and it meets all those needs, you might not really need to purchase that very expensive BMW, which could cost you a lot of money. Or again, the earlier example we talked about with electronics, right? With, the values of smartphones go down significantly. So when they first come out, they're quite expensive, and then every year there's a new model. Same day with cars. So think about that if you're taking out money or having to borrow money to pay for expensive electronics or expensive clothes that you can't afford right now or pay for with your own money. Those are all examples of bad debt.